All right, joining me now to discuss a whole host of issues, including cannabis investing, trade tensions, and also the Raptors' run in the NBA playoffs, is Brett Wilson, the chairman of Canoe Financial. Brett, always good to see you. We're going to talk about Raptors in a second, but you are in town to go to the game. Is this correct?
Yeah, I managed to find a couple of tickets as I was wandering the streets of Toronto. And yes, I'm absolutely here for Game 5. And if someone says I just jumped on the bandwagon, yeah.
Okay.
But it's okay. What a hell of a bandwagon.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to get to that in a second. But let me just get your take in terms of top-down macro environment that we're all living in and investing in with respect to U.S.-China trade tensions and Mexico-U.S. And then also, of course, NAFTA. What are you thinking about these days?
Well, Trump is running circles around almost everybody, and whether you like him or despise him, and many people despise him, but he's effective in terms of getting things done for the benefit of the United States. And whether it's getting started on a wall or getting Hawaii kept out of the country or controlling the agenda on U.S. and China, U.S. and Mexico, U.S. and Canada trade challenges, putting tariffs in place to get his way. He's a petulant child, but he's also a skilled negotiator. And whether he means to be skilled, he's getting his way. And that's really the leverage. The U.S. has, it would appear, been fairly easy to deal with in the past, and they've been taken advantage of in the opinion of many in the U.S. So I think
many and bipartisan.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for both Republicans and Democrats to say we've been beaten up. Now, they don't like the way Trump is going about trying to solve the problem, but he is solving it for their benefit. So you have to stand back and respectfully watch what it means. And it's not about running a country on Twitter, but it is about running a country with a force of the economic might that the U.S. has always had.
Where does that leave you in terms of your economic outlook as to whether or not this is going to lead to unintended consequences? Or maybe the United States does come out much stronger on the back of all of this, and therefore you put more money in the United States. What are you thinking about?
I have been investing heavily in the United States, real estate, sports teams, as you know, and certainly cannabis has been where we've really directed a lot of capital because, while Canada got going in many of those areas, they haven't kept going. And that's really why the U.S. starts to look more and more interesting. Now, will Canada benefit? Yeah, we're a sister or a cousin to the United States, and as many have said, when they have the flu, we get a cold for sure. So we're going to be affected by whatever the United States decides to do because we are their closest ally as a trading partner, longest unprotected border in the world. I don't expect a wall to be built there, but we are very dependent on what the U.S. says and does, which is why we need export capacity to both enter the U.S. and to bypass the U.S. in terms of our crude oil and the pipeline conversation.
Do you have any concerns, though, that what we're seeing from the United States right now might lead to a delayed USMCA deal, and that's okay, perhaps, because the current NAFTA stays in place anyway, or what are you thinking there?
I don't have inside knowledge, but I do hear people talking about the fact that it doesn't really matter, was the comment, that the trade negotiations will continue, and apparently they have been continuing. As much as we had a heads of agreement, we didn't have a signed agreement. And of course, every government reserves the right to change the deal, and Trump is the ultimate architect of changing the deal at the last minute if he so chooses.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the cannabis investing. So interesting you say that we've kind of stalled out here a little bit in Canada as it relates to cannabis investing in the United States is getting more momentum. What do you mean?
Well, we had a running start on the world in terms of, and again, remember Tilray and especially Canopy and its growth agenda on a global basis. But we had a running start when, and I'll give credit where it's due, Trudeau and his colleagues said, we want to legalize recreational marijuana. Unfortunately, the framework was an only in government approach where they allowed both provincial and municipal interference. And I call it interference because it's a complete gong show trying to get from the grow ops through processing into distribution and then into the dispensaries. The opportunity for real, and I call it middle-class jobs, but it's real jobs. I hate that term.
Yeah.
I always make fun of the Liberals for always talking about middle-class jobs. They don't seem to care about the guys who generate jobs or the people who don't have jobs. They just care about this mysterious group in the middle. The real point is the jobs are there, the work is there, but regulatory impediments are extraordinary.
Give me an example, though, Brett.
Well, the delays. You look at the number of real operational pot shops or dispensaries in every major city across Canada. You know, I'm involved both as a tenant and a landlord with several dispensaries in British Columbia, for example. And the delay process, we entered into a lease agreement 8 months ago, and the city took 6 months months to decide which of the 30 locations would become 6. And then the province has had that information for more than 6 months. So it's going to be more than a year before this dispensary, which is ready to go. Again, the people are there, the business is there, the franchise is there, the suppliers are there, and they can't get permission to go. And so it's really unclear who is in charge. And that's where Canada has failed. Also on a global basis, I know that inbound queries are coming to Canada saying, how is your regulatory framework working? We don't have a good answer. And I know that certainly, for example, Canopy has figured out how to work within Canada. They've got the online sales, they do have dispensaries, they will have more. You know, they have a platform that's working. Others come and ask, how did you do it? And they go, well, I wouldn't necessarily replicate what we're doing because it's been nothing but a fight.
But Brett, it sounds as though you're looking for less government involvement. But at the same time, how can we go down that path when this is something that I think everybody agrees needs to be regulated?
We agree on regulation, no problem, no concern there.
But governments normally regulate the regulators.
Well,
and
here
you're
we
saying
have,
that's not working.
Well, the worst case is, I mean, we theoretically have a division of responsibility in terms of federal, provincial, and municipal. Unfortunately, in this case, every level has its hand out, wanting to take a piece of the pie, which is fine, but every level wants to regulate. So we have the province regulating, then the number of pot shops in the city. Then the city will get and go in and say, all right, well, we don't want one too close to this school, and we don't want too close to that. And so there's all sorts of regulatory bureaucracy. And let's never, ever, ever assume that government is best known for efficiency. So you layer on 3 levels of inefficiency, no wonder it's a pot show.
Well, what's going on in the United States then? And we should probably almost take a look at Colorado, because they were the ones really first out of the gate and apparently really successful at implementing this. What are they doing so differently versus us?
Colorado put the pedal to the metal right away. But let's remember, in the United States, we had that problem. Like if I went to the United States to go to attend a cannabis conference, I had to say no, I was going to lie on the beach. You know, you just, again, the cross-border issue was crazy. And then there was the jurisdictional issues. You couldn't go from state to state or county to county carrying cannabis. Yet within the United States, 2 years ago, I was at a restaurant. We see a billboard outside that says, to order cannabis, call 1-800, blah, blah. So we're sitting at the restaurant. One of the guys downloaded the app, ordered cannabis. Before dessert came, the cannabis was at the restaurant. This is in Los Angeles. So you know, and I knew then that that market was about to explode. The economics and the, I'll call it the entrepreneurial spirit of the players there. So in terms of our family office, my son and I, in directing investments, we're probably more than half of all new investments in the last year have been aimed at primarily California.
And specifically, what area within cannabis these days?
We'll play, so where we've backed away in Canada is grow ops, because we believe the grow model is fulfilled. We're just waiting on Health Canada and other approvals, but we have enough capacity to fill the market as we know
We do,
it.
because why is capacity such an issue then?
Well,
Isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's a chicken and egg situation.
Okay.
We can't get the pot shops, the dispensaries open, and those that do open are running into supply problems because Health Canada hasn't approved many of the grow ops that they've given. Remember, there's 3 or 4 levels. There's the right to grow, the right to harvest, the right to distribute. You know, there's a whole series of approvals required, and so we've over-regulated the Canadian industry relative to what we're doing in the United States. The same time frame, take a year and a half to get growing in Canada. I can do that in 3 months in the U.S. They are open for business, state by state. And we know that it's coming. Like more than half of the states, the United States, have approved cannabis. So as much as they don't have a federal jurisdiction sorted out, they are operational. Unlike Canada that had a federal jurisdiction who've now bungled it. And that's where, like, we're supposed to have implementation this fall for edibles. The black market is running. You can buy gummy bears almost online.
And that's
cookies.
all black market?
That's all black market, because none of that's allowed as infused edibles, because we're still waiting on the guidelines and instructions from Health Canada. That's 2 years we've been waiting on these rules.
So what are the rules in the States as it relates to edibles? Because I think most people would agree that there really isn't enough research into edibles or even the health side of this to know the right dosing and who it's appropriate for and what else it could cause?
See, my understanding is a little different, that we are actually further along in terms of understanding, 10 milligrams of THC and 5 milligrams of CBD in a cookie, as long as it's cooked by someone you trust and understand, and that's where the regulated, when you take an an oil from any dispensary in Canada, you have to trust that what's in it is in fact what you were told on the label.
Yeah.
Nothing different for edibles, nothing different. Now, there are some risks. You leave a bag of gummy bears out that are infused with THC, kids are going to jump on them. And that's why right now, with the black market having control of the edibles market, we don't have regulatory oversight. We don't have the control, the discipline that we need in terms of whether it's a cookie or a cake. I'm invested heavily in Gabriella's Kitchen, as simple as Gabby, but they started out making organic pasta, and now we're into organic infused pasta. But of course, we can't do that in Canada, so we've launched in the US and things are rocking.
Now, are these publicly traded companies? That can't be, but are they? What
Well, Gabby is, but there's lots of public, there's lots of private. And the other thing is that the Canadian capital markets are more efficient, which is why many US issuers are here listing in Canada, trading in Canada. Harborside went public today in Canada, and it's trading actively. It's an American company. It's got virtually nothing to do with Canada except the capital markets.
Okay.
So we've got a hodgepodge of regulatory dysfunction.
Yeah.
And again, it starts with federal, provincial, and municipal.
Sounds like this is an industry that should have been bottoms up, just like they did in the state by state, and this should have been almost local and then gone up from there.
Well, yes and no. Remember, without the leadership of states like Colorado and now obviously California is a bigger market than Canada. So if we're going to focus our investment capital, it's going to be into a place that's as concentrated as it is. I'm not sure that we didn't do it right in terms of federal.
Top down.
I like the top down,
too.
but it was allowing so much discretion at the provincial and the city levels.
It's hard to control.
That, it's out of control is really what's happened. It's not in control is the best way.
Brett, last question here. You are an owner of the Predators.
An owner, yes.
An owner.
Yeah.
What are you excited about tonight with respect to the Raptors, and how do you think they're probably feeling, the owners?
So some can accuse me of jumping on the bandwagon because I used to joke about basketball being interesting as to 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But I've paid attention, just as most of Canada has, to the last series and then this series, and I was delighted. The Milwaukee Bucks introduced me to the sport of basketball by going down, and certainly watching the Raptors play has really been something that's bringing Canada together. I tweet about them as the Canada Raptors, and of course, once it's all over, they'll go back to being the Toronto Raptors. But I'm here to join in the celebration. I'm really looking forward. As a sports team owner, I understand what the vibe is, and it means a lot to community in terms of infrastructure and jobs and activity, and call it the tourism effect. It's spectacular, and I'm one of those who are here for it.
And you point out that there aren't too many Canadians on the team. You point that out. So
yeah, no,
it doesn't matter. They're still representing Toronto and Canada.
Some would say it's Canada versus the U.S. I would say no. It's a North American basketball enterprise, and we happen to have an extraordinary team put together right now. And there aren't a lot of Canadians on the ice, so to speak, but it's irrelevant. We are behind whoever's playing and representing, if you will, the Raptors.
And you point out that with respect to the NHL playoffs, what team to vote for?
I'm still paying attention, but if you're going to vote Canadian, Marchand and the Boston Bruins, I think there's 5 Canadians on the Boston Bruins.
Okay.
And let's celebrate the fact that St. Louis has over 20 Canadians on the team. So go Canada, go.
All right, we'll leave it there, Brett. Great to see you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That, of course, is Brett Wilson, chairman at Canoe Financial.